Hi, my name is Dave, and today we're going to look at a couple of interesting educational toy telescopes, nominally educational, from the 1930s and from the 1950s. This is something from the 1930s called the Astron-O-Set. Very interesting, vintage, old. I'm surprised it has survived. Seems to be made of some sort of pasteboard, I think. Anyway, what we have inside here is a completely charming telescope. It's got about a 35 power or so, a little 1.5 inch objective, something like that. Some instructions. A couple of other mysterious devices that we'll talk about. Charming moon maps. This sheet of paper. Sticks. This looks a little like a yardstick, but it's not really a yardstick. It's a little different. This device here. And a tripod for the telescope. So let's have a look at this stuff and see what it's all about. Here we have an extremely shaky, I've seen some shaky tripods in my days, but this has got to be the most shaky tripod I've ever seen. I'm just a little afraid it's going to collapse under its own weight here. Okay, to go on the shaky tripod, we have a nice oversized telescope. This has got a little tiny diminutive, I'm not sure if you can see how small that is. It's about maybe 1.5 inches lens in it, optic in it. No big deal, it still actually works okay, not bad. As well as you could expect something like this to work. Anyway, unnecessarily large tube. Does have a focusing device. Look at the size of the eyepiece. It's got to be 1.25 inches maybe. Now, this wobbly, shaky tripod is supposed to hold this thing. Wish me luck. I don't really want to break this. There's a fancy tightening device. Look at that. How cool is that? Okay, so you can, let's just lower it down so I don't have to worry about anything happening there. So now you've got your telescope. You can aim it at things. It's about as cheesy as you could ever get. Get this, here's something cool. It comes with a solar projection device. You snap this on here. You can make a little image of the sun on this little tiny sheet of paper or whatever and see sunspots, maybe, if you're lucky. Not the greatest telescope in the world. Here are the instructions for making the little personal planetarium device. It's kind of a lampshade sized thing that has a picture of the stars on the inside. Kind of cute, very charming, interesting little thing. This is part of it. This is a little something that goes inside there. Okay, here's some of the other goodies in the box. This device here, this, he didn't call it that, but this would be a nocturnal. A device for, you set this up, you aim at this at the North Star, and then you aim this at the Big Dipper, more or less. And then you got something that will give you the time. If you know the date of the year, this will give you the approximate time of night. So that's called a nocturnal, basically. Here are a couple of actually kind of cute little moon maps. It only goes through the first about 12 days or so. Then it's got this device here. This is a star bow kind of a device. Tycho Brahe used something similar to this. There's some calibrations on here. So that if you hold this up to your eye, and this is supposed to be bowed, you're supposed to take a piece of, I don't want to bend it too far, take a piece of twine or something and bend it, and then you've got a way to measure an angle. Then you have a complete instruction book. Boy, is this charming. I'll show you some close-ups of some of the pictures in here. instructions for how to use all this stuff, basic information about how the thing works and everything. The guy was clearly an amateur astronomer, but also an amateur educator, and he was interested in teaching people about the sky. Okay, this little device is called the Skyview Observatory, and it's from the 1950s, about 1958. We'll open up the box and see what we've got inside here. On the inside of the box are some instructions for how to put it together. And inside, so you have a sort of a sky finder device. It's designed for a fixed latitude, and I'm guessing that's 45 degrees. It would probably work pretty well for any place in the United States anyway, any more sort of mid-latitude location. So here you have a regular planisphere, my trusty Phillips planisphere. And what you can see is that, well, all you do is you set the date versus the time of day, and you'll get a pretty good estimation of what the sky is going to look like. And it's somewhat distorted because of the size and so forth, and it's a flat surface. But that's a basic way of figuring out what the sky looks like. This does essentially the same thing. So you've got a way of setting the date versus the time. So you set the date versus the time. And then in order to find a constellation, what you're going to need to do is you're going to have to set the declination. You've got right ascension here, and then this will allow you to set the declination. So you put this on. I think I'm just going to take that up. It's actually a little bit fairly unnecessary to have a telescope on there, because this thing is going to give you a pretty good idea. You can see there's a scale over here, so this will give you basically the declination. So you got 40, 0, 90 degrees, etc. And then all you need is a picture of the constellation on there. Put that, attach that right there. And theoretically this, once you set it, will give you at least a pretty good idea of where the constellation is and what it looks like. So maybe you could actually do a pretty good job of finding things in the sky. I think it's actually a fairly clever little toy. The telescope is it's really a joke and kind of not very helpful. Well, this toy by itself, without the telescope, this part of it is pretty darn cool. Not bad. Now, as far as finding a planet and so forth, theoretically you could figure out where a planet was or whatever and use this device to aim this at the telescope. The telescope is fairly useless. It's about an aperture of maybe 3/4 of an inch, and it's got a tiny soda straw, kind of a terrible, cheap eyepiece. So there you have a charming little toy called the Skyview Observatory. I hope you've enjoyed having a look at these educational toy telescopes, vintage from the 1930s and from the 1950s. Thank you for watching.